go through this. I'm pretty informal, so I don't mind being interrupted, but I do have multiple things going on multiple screens. So please feel free to just unmute yourself and ask a question. I might not see it if your hand is raised. But we are going to go through things that researchers might need to know about HR. And so I'll talk a little bit just about our HR team and what we look like and where we are. And then we'll talk about more of the specifics regarding research that might be relevant for the group. This format is based on suggestions from Stacey and a conversation that we had a few months ago about what might be helpful for the research enterprise. So we're going to talk about the different bargaining units, postdocs, as well as the hiring and costs for those, research awards versus employment, and then employment versus contracted services policy. And like I said, feel free to jump in if you have questions. So we are located on the 4th floor of Ad Hum. The HR office is on one side of the building, and then our HR business partner offices are in the hallway. So if you ever want to pop by my office, I'm in Ad Hum 429, but you can always go to the front desk and ask for Kate, and they'll bring you to my office as well. Within HR, there are all of these units, which have ridiculously long names. So Organizational Development and People Programs is our ODPP team. That's where the HR business partners sit. We also have 2 HR admins that are on that team that lots of you would likely have interacted with when you are trying to post jobs. Jamie and Shannon are their names. And then we have an HR coordinator named Jen. She also supports on the staffing side. We have Brittany, who is our talent acquisition advisor. And then myself and Megan as the business partners. Megan right now is acting as the interim director, and I'm acting as the interim senior HR business partner. So that's our team. And then also within HR, we have our faculty and staff relations team. They deal with anything to do with our collective bargaining agreements, as well as anything to do with discipline kind of goes over to them. So we support on the performance management side, and then our faculty and staff relations team takes it over when it's moving over to discipline. There's a pension and benefits team, a health and safety team, a payroll team, HR service center, and HR support. So they're the people that sit at the front desk. They're the ones that help generate letters of offer. They do a lot of the admin support for HR. And then they also work very closely with payroll and the rest of the teams. And then we also have an equity, diversity, and inclusion specialist, as well as Respectful University Services that sit under HR. Both of those individuals, Sujatha and Kayla are their names. They actually work in the Riddell Center, so they're not in the Ad Hum building, but they are part of our HR team. So got a big group. So there's lots of different ways that HR can support you, and I would start by saying that if you do feel like you need HR support, please just reach out to myself via email or give me a call, and I'd be happy to support you. Or if it's not something that I can help you with, I'll definitely point you in the right direction. Lots of times I'm sending people back to work with Stacey, or Stacey sending people to me. That's something that Stacey and I are happy to navigate which one of us makes sense to support you. But we are responsible, and by we I mean the Organizational Development and People Programs team. We call it ODPP for short because the name is, like I said, very long. We're responsible for staffing, immigration support, the performance review process in all of the agreements, as well as out of scope performance reviews. And we also play a role in this, in being a strategic partner and working with faculty and or unit leadership. So each of our units or faculties across the university has a specific HR business partner that supports them. I have been supporting research since April of last year, so just coming up on a year. And I will continue to support research, and I can be a resource when it comes to navigating the collective agreements, handling performance situations, addressing employee concerns. If I don't have the answer, I will certainly point you in the right direction. But the goal of the HR business partners is to provide proactive and practical guidance on best HR practices. So feel free to reach out if you ever need support on any of those things. And so at the university, we have 5 collective agreements, and many of you will be a part of the IRFA faculty agreement. The 2 agreements that you likely hire within are the QP 2419 student agreement and the QP 5791 research agreement. Luckily for this group, those are our two smallest agreements. So it's kind of nice from the research side that typically when we're hiring, we're dealing with our two, I say smallest, not necessarily simplest, but smallest agreements. So QP 5791 research covers our postdoctoral fellows, research associates, research assistants, and research technologists. And then QP 2419 is the union that represents students employed to provide teaching and research assistance. So in 2419, there will be situations in which you have to post a job in our eRecruit system. Stacy is the expert in that and would be able to support with that. And our QP 5791 research agreement, there's no requirement to post jobs. So there's a lot more flexibility in that in general, but the position is going to be posted. It must be posted for a minimum of 5 days. So basically to say, if you have somebody already in mind for the position under QP 5791, we can't, or sorry, QP 5791 research specifically, if you have someone in mind, we can proceed without posting. If you know you need a position but don't necessarily have an individual in mind and we need to post, it has to be posted for a minimum of 5 days. So in both agreements, the duties outlined in the posting have to fall within the position categories in the agreement. So like I said, under 5791 research, it's only those 4 positions, the postdocs, research associates, research assistants, and research techs. We can't hire somebody under QP 5791 research with a different title than those 4, and the duties are all outlined in the agreement. So we can always provide support and guidance on postings as well as where something might belong. So oftentimes people will come to myself or Stacy or both of us and give us kind of a list of duties that are needed, and then we can help navigate where that might fit or what agreement that might be under. And so there are lots of different ways that the university can compensate students through their academic career. And there's a significant difference between how payroll processes a research award and employment. And that I would say is one of the biggest and most frequent conversations we are having with research is how are we going to pay people, given that we've been given X amount of dollars to do X task and it's going to this individual, how do we want to get that money into their pockets? And so a research award is not considered to be employment income, and it's reported to Canada Revenue Agency as a scholarship on a T4. Employment is processed as income and is subject to required taxes and deductions. And so this is something that we have to be really cognizant of as we are setting up employees and making sure that if it's supposed to be employment income, it's set up as employment income. If it's meant to be a scholarship, it's set up as a scholarship. There is a guide to support the decision on how to appropriately compensate. And so I put together the key takeaways here, but the full guide is on your source, and I'll show you how to access that after as well. But the key takeaways are that if it's a research award, it's offered to support a post-secondary student in their research. The student is the primary beneficiary of the award, and then the work that they're doing contributes directly to their own research. Whereas a student under QP 2419 is hired to work on an academic staff member's project, and they're not the primary beneficiary of whatever funding it is that we're receiving. There is an employment contract in place, and it must be posted if the job is more than 25 hours per semester. Rehires can happen for research-related positions without reposting. And typically you'll see language within postings that say, if it's a term position, it would say may become permanent or maybe extended and or become permanent. Oftentimes you'll see that just in the initial posting as well. I'm bopping right through here. Okay, so your source, I know this is likely self-explanatory, but I am going to just share my screen and show you some of the different things that our HR group has located on your source. So this is our shared site under human resources. And so there's lots and lots and lots of things in here, and I would suggest that you go and take a look for yourself and bookmark what you need to bookmark. However, when you're onboarding a new employee, all of their forms are here. That's something that is relevant for anybody who's bringing on a new employee. There's onboarding FAQs, and then there's also forms for new employees for you as a supervisor. Anything to do with recruitment, e-recruit, how to start workflows, all of those things is under this careers tab. And again, Stacy is an expert when it comes to the posting of jobs and making sure those workflow letters go through. So you can always reach out to Stacy or myself. The benefits and compensation information is all in here as well. Any information on pension or retirement, all of that's here. We have our performance forms, so QP 5791 staff, and then our out of scope performance review forms are in there. Anything to do with safety, the rest of these maybe aren't as relevant to my specific unit, but under workflows, your conflict of interest is found under their employee departure workflows, which is when somebody is ending their employment. And it's their last day with us, or before their last day with us, we would indicate starting an employee departure workflow. And then under forms and documents, all of the collective agreements are here as well. So if you ever have a question about what's in a collective agreement and want to check it before you ask, you certainly don't have to, but they're all on there as well. Criteria documents are on there, as well as the out of scope guidelines, payroll manuals, etc. And then there's a staff listing as well. So there's also always on this front page, if there's anything that HR has been asked to do or help facilitate. So the pulse survey for the employee engagement survey that went out a couple weeks ago, that is linked on our front page. We have a new employee onboarding essentials course, and so that is relatively new. You might be familiar with the previous format of our new employee orientation, just being that we held, I believe it was once a quarter, and it was in person, and we would go through all of the content and then did a campus tour. We've now transferred all of that content into this online course so that people can take it at their leisure. With it being only offered once a quarter, we were sometimes finding that people would start, let's say in January, and then they weren't actually getting to new employee orientation until end of March, early April. By that time, somebody else has hopefully given them a tour of the campus, or they at least know where they need to go. And so this just allows for us to get that new employee orientation information to folks in a little bit more of a timely manner, as we have new people starting with us like quite literally every single week. So all of that is within our Your Source page, and you can always go check that out if you have anything that you need. It's likely there, but like I said, you're welcome to reach out to myself first, and I can help you point you in the right direction as well. Yeah, this is the same thing that we already talked about. So those are the kind of areas that are within Your Source that you can reference. But like I said, if you're ever looking for something and you don't want to go through Your Source, please just send me an email and I can easily point you in the right direction. And if I can't, I will find the person that can. So eRecruit is something that, again, Stacy works quite closely with folks within the research enterprise to make sure that they have what they need in eRecruit. And then our HR admins that I mentioned before, Jamie and Shannon, they support as well on the back end of eRecruit for the research enterprise. So there are some situations in which you have to post a position, and that happens through eRecruit. You may already have access to the system, and if not, you might just not need access given your role, but your faculty or unit would have support through Stacy, or if you're a faculty member, through your faculty administrator that can create a posting for you. As a hiring manager, you can always request access to the system, and you can do that by directly emailing recruitment@uregina.ca. But it's not actually required to generate a posting, and you would be able to access resumes with a guest user account. So you don't necessarily need to create an account if you don't want to, if you're a hiring manager. But sometimes, just depending on the nature of the posting, you might want to have specific access. So you can always reach out to us and we can make sure that you have whatever you need. And so the career opportunities page is something that is public on our website and has information for those looking to apply. Internal candidates, of course, can see them as well, but it has general information on the application process as well as links to the Canadian Immigration and Citizenship website. Details on work and study permits, etc. There's lots of information regarding all of those processes on the website. If you have a student or a prospective employee looking for information, you can send them to this part of the website, or of course, always send them to us as well. We would be happy to chat with them. Once you've actually found a qualified candidate, you'll have to issue them a letter of offer prior to their first day of work. And so sometimes, Stacey will laugh, but sometimes the timelines on research recruitment specifically are very, very tight. We would not under any circumstances advise that you have someone start working before we have a signed letter of offer. And so if there's a situation in which the timelines are going to be really tight and it's going to be a quick turnaround, the best thing you can do to set both yourself and us up for success is to let us know. So flag it with Stacey, flag it with myself, so we can help push things through on the background. Not always can we make things happen, just in the nature of the way things go into the queue, but we can just keep an eye on it and make sure nothing's stalled or waiting. And so letters of offer go through the general hire workflow process, and this reduces manual administrative effort in drafting hire letters. So they're actually not done manually, they're done through a system, and then they're checked by our team of folks that sit kind of at our front desk area. You'll see there's 3 lovely ladies that sit there, and they are checking all of those letters that go through our system. So in the workflow, you'll have to provide all relevant position details to Stacey so that she can put them in the system, and that would likely include things like the posting number, and then Stacey would access the candidate's information through the posting number. In the case that you didn't post it, you would need to connect the individual with the administrative support to relay the required information for them to generate the letter of offer. So it's important to note that the cost of benefits on the employer side is covered by yourself or by the unit in which is paying this individual. So if you have a grant for a specific amount of dollars and you want to hire 2 individuals, you should be factoring in the cost of benefits before making a salary offer in order to ensure you have enough funds to cover it. This, I would say, again, is one of the most common questions we get from the research side is like, I have $60,000 to pay this individual, but I also want to make sure that they have benefits. How much should I actually be putting on the salary line of their letter of offer? And so we can help calculate an estimate. And so QP 5791 research employees with only statutory deductions, benefit cost would be approximately 7% of their salaries. And then if they qualify for benefits, then it's about 8%. So we can't calculate the exact amount you can pay someone by factoring in the cost of benefits. It's not possible for us to do that ahead of time because, of course, the cost is always changing. But we can kind of give those 7 and 8% estimates so that we can make our best guess. And we would always advise to err on the side of caution. And finance also can partially support with this. So it's kind of a team effort between HR and finance to make sure that we're hiring at the appropriate levels. This is likely something that is more geared towards Stacey, but it's something that's good for everyone to kind of understand. These are the job codes that we use, and every job that somebody is hired into has to have a job code associated with it. So for QP 5791 research, the job code that is chosen depends on the position title and whether you are paying the individual salaried or hourly. Some of the factors to consider are the length of the appointment and the full-time equivalency. So are they a full-time employee, a part-time employee, or do they work unscheduled hours? If you're hiring under QP 5791 research, in order to be eligible for benefits, the individual has to be in a term of 8 months or longer, and at least 50% of full-time equivalent qualify. So if you have somebody that you're hiring for a 4-month term, we cannot offer them benefits. It has to be over 8 months in length, and they have to be working at least 50%. So that's just the general rule for benefits across the board. As the individual who's hiring employees, whether it's staff or students or contractors, you are responsible for ensuring that they are hired appropriately, as in the correct category. Where there's an employee-employer relationship, income earned is subject to statutory deductions such as income tax, CPP, premiums, and employment insurance. And that the university does not enter an agreement with an individual that states that their individual is not considered an employee if the particular circumstance of the relationship are not consistent with the statement. So more often than not, as we're hiring employees, there are rare instances that you would have to enter into a contract for services. But this policy provides insight into the general rule to determine if it's an employment relationship or a contractor. This is again something that we can help support if you came to us with a list of duties or what needed to get done, and had gone through the policy and were still confused about where it should actually fall. Please reach out, we can help navigate that. If it is classified work and we're wanting to hire a contractor, there would need to be significant evidence that we've done our best to try to hire through whatever relevant collective agreement it is. But there certainly are circumstances where we've done our best to hire through the collective agreement that's relevant. We can't seem to get a qualified individual in the position. And so then we're looking to contract out the service. And so we would go through the policy and make sure that we are doing it as per that contracted service policy and then go from there. The CRA has established 4 criteria that can be used to distinguish contract service employment versus contract for a service. And that those 4 things are control, ownership of equipment and tools, opportunity for profit and risk of loss, and integration. The 4 criteria will not necessarily be given equal weighting in determining the type of relationship. And this is not something that we can be flexible on. And so this is, again, rules within the CRA. This isn't just a U of R policy. And so we hold pretty firm on this, and but it is something that continues to come up and will continue to be a conversation of what can we contract out versus what do we hire through our collective agreements. I would suggest that the default kind of answer should be that we should try always to be hiring internally through one of our collective agreements as employment. But again, there's a reason that this policy exists, and there's a reason that the ability to hire contractors exists. So sometimes we do have to go that route, and we just have a few things that we have to make sure we're doing before we go down that path. And so that's all the information that I have. Start at your source. I think that's the place where there's quite literally everything and anything you'd ever need to know about HR would be in your source. There's all kinds of policies, all kinds of FAQs. There's information on hiring, on what to do when you've terminated somebody, everything that you need to know there. However, there's also support staff as well as your HR partner and myself to be able to support and making sure that you have access to the information that you need. So you can always go through Stacy, or you can come directly to me, and we'll make sure that you get the information that you need. And I think it's important to say too that for those of you who are faculty members as well as researchers as well, the research enterprise is very unique in the way that we hire and the way that we have people in the enterprise, and so it's not as straightforward. And again, there's a separate collective agreement for QP 5791 research, but there's support here to help make sure that you have the information that you need when you need it. So this is if you have general inquiries, you can always send them to HR support. Specific e-recruit inquiries, so that would go to Jamie, who I mentioned before. She manages that inbox, as well as Shannon. Our talent acquisition advisor, Britt, she manages all of our staffing. So not for QP 5791 research, but for APT and out of scope positions. Britt is the lead on those. And then all other inquiries can come directly to me, or you can start with me, and I will get it where it needs to go. And Megan Ludick is our other HR partner as well. Like I said, she's currently acting in the director role on an interim basis, but either of us would be available and happy to answer your questions. So.
I'll add one thing, Kate. We also have a generic email, and researchers will know we have the research.centers@URegina email that is managed by our relatively new admin, and she also mans the reception at the front of the office. So if people get a head start by emailing us and saying, hey, what is it? Like, what are the questions that we need for hiring through a workflow or on eRecruit? We've got little templates and forms that we've created. We can share links with people so that it's a one-stop, provide all the info, and then we can enter it. But that's always an option too.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
That's
I don't know that I'm so much as the expert that you allude to.
Hey, I think you know more than you give yourself credit for.
I just have really good supports, including you and Megan and Jamie and Britt and all of you guys that give me the answers that make me look so great.
Okay. Amber, do you have a question?
I do, yeah. Is it okay to ask questions?
Certainly, yes. Please go ahead.
Oh, okay, thanks. Well, first of all, thank you for the presentation. This is all really helpful. This is the stuff I learned the hard way. I wish I would have attended this presentation like 10 years ago when I started. So thank you. The question, I actually have two questions. And the first is, sorry if this is available somewhere and I just haven't seen it, but I'm wondering between the two 2419 and 5791 contracts, is there like, because they both cover research assistants, if we wanted to hire a research assistant on say a tri-council funded research project, do we have an obligation to go with students first, like QP 2419 as the first option, and then revert to 5791 if we don't find someone who's a student? Or is there a priority system, I mean, for students?
No, not from our end. Sometimes, and from our end, I mean from the university's side. Sometimes we do see stipulations in the funding agreements where they require either a student or actually sometimes a non-student to be hired. But in terms of our side being the universities, there's no need to prioritize one over the other. It would just be if there's any stipulations on the funding agreement.
Okay, great. That's good to know. Thanks. I do have a second question, but maybe I should let someone else go first.
You can go ahead if you have another question.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm in no rush.
All right. Well, my second question then is one of the challenges I have with research awards versus hourly employment for students is oftentimes that separation between like the student's project and my project is really blurry, because like the structure I tend to use is that students will do a specific component of a project that I'm running, like maybe 1 out of 4 case studies would be a student's thesis. So I'm wondering if the student was involved in something that, like maybe, let's say, doing some knowledge mobilization outputs that stem directly from their case study, their thesis, but also includes aspects of the findings from the bigger project. Is that research award, or is that, I realize this is a really specific example, but kind of what I'm getting at is like, where's the line? How direct is direct in terms of that?
Yeah, it's a fair question. I think honestly, we would deal with it on a case by case basis, in terms of like letting us know who the student is and what their impact is. Typically, the default, I would say, is that we would hire, if they are a U of R student actively and will continue to be for the duration of their employment, we would hire them under QP 2419. That's kind of the way that we default. But if they're coming up on graduation or they won't be a student for the duration of the project, we can certainly look at QP 5791 research, or doing it as an award. Typically, we would advise to do it as employment, so not as an award, but rather as employment income, so that again, it goes through the proper deductions for taxes and such. We have seen instances where CRA is auditing these things and people are getting flagged for doing work but getting awards, and it's actually employment. So I would say the default would be QP 2419 for students if they are an active student. If for whatever reason they're going to be graduating we can move to that 5791 research. But if they are the direct, I think the language in here was the direct beneficiary. So the research award being that they are doing a lot of the primary research, I guess, is another way that we've talked about it. I understand that oftentimes we have people that are supervising, like a postdoc or whatever that might look like. In that case, it would likely be under 5791 research, but if they're more so on the supporting end, it would be under 2419. Does that answer your question? I know it's kind of vague, and the reason for that is because every situation is a little bit different, but is that helpful at all?
It is, yeah, it's helpful. I think it's probably something that is good to consult you about.
Yes.
For once, where the two, like students project and the researchers project are very interconnected, probably makes sense to consult you. But yeah, that's good to know overall. So thank you so much.
Yes, of course. Thanks, Amber. Okay, well, if other questions come up after this as you're thinking through it, feel free to reach out. I think Stacy will know that a lot of these things are like we have to just talk through on a case-by-case basis because there's not a lot of repeat situations in research.
Yeah.
That's the joy of research. But yeah, always available and happy to chat through and support in whatever in whatever way is needed. So
I think the talking it through too is handy for researchers so that they are reminded whether they're going through QP or 2419 or 5791 research, like their pay is different, like depending on what level they're at. And then you have to factor in their benefits. And like Kate said at the start, if it's on a grant, you don't want to run out of money because you allocated the wrong amount to pay this person and then it's way much more than you anticipated. So that's one thing that we've kind of been able to flag, just an FYI. What you say they're getting paid, they're actually getting paid a little bit more when it goes through the system. Yeah.
We've all learned that one the hard way once or twice. I think too, it is helpful to know how much money there is available up front because there is obviously stipulations within our QP 5791 has a QP 5791 research has a minimum that we have to pay people, but there's actually no maximum. So like we can pay people as much as we want, but we do have to adhere to that minimum. So if there's not enough funds to cover whatever the minimum rate would be, then we can't hire them through that agreement. So as much information as you have to be able to give to Stacy and I, it will make it a better recommendation and likely less bumps along the way. So that includes like the timing of it, the funds that are available, what type of work they'll be doing, how integrated they actually are. And so that whole, are they the main beneficiary or not? But yeah, we would be happy to talk through those things with each of you. Cool.
Awesome.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yes, and this will be posted on our website early next week with Kate's presentation too. So if you, Amber, or anybody, if you want to share this or recommend people that are starting out or looking to hire and go through this process, this video will be available on our website. So it's there all year round for anybody to need. Yeah.
Sounds good. Happy Friday, everyone.
Happy Friday.